Yeah, I start the show with my face on the screen now. What of it? What I do, baby. Welcome to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, the show that simplifies fantasy basketball for you. I am Dan Besbris, and this is brought to you by FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook, proud presenting sponsor of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball and a partner on the Believe Network. Today, we are looking at the 10 most added players across fantasy basketball today. It's not something we're going to do every day because there are a lot of sort of limiting factors when you think about this time of year. September 16th, we're still 5 weeks away from the start of the season, which, by the way, not that far. I better get all my other leagues set up. But it does give us a little bit of a look at leagues that have already drafted and sort of what people are doing who are scouring the waiver wire and what players may be popping into the news. And then we'll try to translate some of that over for you guys. Please hit that subscribe button as you're settling in. Please hit that like button on YouTube if you're settling in. Let's get the party started. The names we're going to be exploring today, you can see the first four of them on your screen. Neemias Queta, Dejounte Murray, Kyrie Irving, Quentin Grimes, Yves Missi, McCain, Sam Hauser, Dennis Schroder, Bub Carrington, and Damian Lillard. Those are the top 10 names that are being added to fantasy rosters today. So let's begin with Queta. He is out in Boston, has been for a couple of seasons now. Why? Why is Queta the number one player in ads across fantasy leagues? Well, a couple of things have to come together for this to be the case. Number one, he has to have been not drafted in those leagues. So the players that we're going to be talking about on today's show are going to be, like, we're not far enough into draft season for someone to have been drafted and then dropped and then re-added. That's not really a phenomenon you're going to see right now. And maybe that creeps in if we did one of these like right before the season started. But right now, we're talking about players that are being added to rosters who were probably just drafted 2 days ago. Everybody cleared waivers, and then someone got plopped onto a team. So that's thing number one. Thing number one, not drafted in the bulk of leagues. Thing number two, something must have happened that made this player seem more interesting, whether it's news or a role or something roster related for in real life or on your fantasy team. How does that come together for a player like Queta to end up with him being the number one most added player right now? The other thing, it's worth mentioning, this is a low volume time of year right now. We're talking about, double single digits kind of ads as opposed to sometimes 4 and 5 digit type stuff when we get into the regular season. But again, it's not nothing. So the big thing with Queta is that it seems like he's been at least listed, or the expectation is that he's going to be the starting center for the Boston Celtics this year. Remember, the Celtics got rid of Kristaps Porzingis. Al Horford did not re-sign, or has not re-signed. He's not anywhere yet. So the top two centers on the Celtics are arguably gone. One of them definitely. The other one probably. Which left Boston with, well, three, actually. The top three centers are all gone. Because remember, Luke Kornet ended up playing a bunch of time down the stretch when the Celtics were resting everybody. He's in San Antonio now. Luke Kornet's gone as well. So sorry, not just the top two centers, the top three centers in Boston are all gone. Leaving Queta as the only center left over from last year. Xavier Tillman, I guess, qualifies. He's a fairly undersized big man. And then Boston brought in Luka Garza, who was the one when he showed up when you're like, oh, is this a thing? Is this a thing that I need to be concerning myself with? The answer is probably. It's not going to be like one of these guys just runs away with the center position, because not any of those dudes is particularly great at basketball, but all of them are fine, and they all bring a certain different pile of stuff to the table. Queta is going to be more of your rebounding, rim running defensive big man. Luka Garza is not a leaper. He can space the floor a little bit. And then Xavier Tillman is kind of like, I don't know, say the worst of both worlds, but he's not great at almost any of those things, but he can fill a spot as kind of an undersized big who gets some steals, and he's okay. So what I would say is the actionable stuff here is it worthwhile to add Queta, or for those of you that haven't drafted, which is probably the vast majority of you, is it worthwhile to be looking at him as a last-round guy? Is that what this information is telling us, that he's probably the starting center on the Celtics? Well, you can look at the game log and try to get a feel for what Queta might be able to do. And it's not a glorious thing, because last year he cleared 25 minutes, 1, 2, we'll count it up as we're going, 3, still on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are a few times early in the year before Porzingis got back. 7 times last year, Queta cleared 25 minutes per game. They were not all pretty. Got to scroll over because Yahoo's changed the way they display stuff, but we'll figure this out. So the first time was relatively early in the season. I'll try to zoom out a tad. I don't know if that's going to help. Nope, still doesn't display everything. Good Lord, Yahoo. This display is just god-awful. We'll be looking for other ways to display this. It was in a game against the Golden State Warriors, and he ended up with 14 and 8 with 2 steals and a block. No, 0 steals, 2 blocks. Is that turnovers, that column? Yeah, that's turnovers. So, I mean, that's fine. 12 and 8 with a block. We're not going to throw a ticker tape parade for it or anything. Oh, 14 and 8, sorry, with 2 blocks. I undercut you, Queta. Next one was the very next game. They were hosting the Brooklyn Nets. He played 26 minutes, took 2 shots over 26 minutes. So he had 3 points, 10 rebounds, did have 3 blocked shots. So, the defense, the rebounds and the defensive numbers were a little bit better in that one. Scroll up the board. Let's go a little bit higher on this thing. Toronto, he actually took 8 shots in that ball game. He had 12 points, 8 boards, and 1 block. That was the one that I thought I was looking at before. He had a 12 and 9 mixed in there with 2 steals and 4 blocks. That was kind of the big one for Queta. That was a 25-minute game and a blowout win over the Clippers. All that to say, even when he's been given playing time, the results haven't exactly been mind-blowing. 11 and 8 with a steal and a block is probably the kind of line you'd be looking for out of Queta if you think he's going to get enough minutes. So what does that mean? Well, I mean, in a magical, perfect universe where everything breaks the right way and he gets more than that, which I don't think is going to happen, but you never know, that's how he clears the top 100. 25, 26, 27 minutes, he's probably somewhere in the 90 to 125 range, which is sort of that, what we referred to it before, replaceable. The stream zone. These guys are at the upper limit of the stream zone. Usually like one guy away from having more fantasy value if Luka Garza goes down and they have to play Queta a bit more, that type of thing. But we're not talking about a guy that is going to dominate in any particular category. He's a good field goal percent dude because pretty much all he does is layups and dunks. He's an okay foul shooter, so at least he's not going to crush you there. But like, you can see the numbers. This is a guy who's going to average probably a block, maybe 1.2 blocks per game if he got those 25, 26 minutes. He'll probably get you about, I don't know, half a steal, 0.6, 0.7 steals. So, I mean, that's the upshot there is, could he get between 1.5 and 2 defensive stats in 25, 26 minutes a game? Yeah, probably. Could he get you around 7 rebounds in that amount of time? Yeah, probably. Could he get you 9, 10 points? Probably. That's very much like a third, even fourth center type of number. So I'm not super excited about it. I think he'll be fine. Would I draft him with my last pick? Yeah, based on the guys that are usually on the board at pick 140, 150. Absolutely. Belongs on rosters as a 12th, 13th round pick because mostly everybody else is going to be picked over by that point. But is this someone that you have to go, bend your strategy to get? I don't think so. Next name on the list is Dejounte Murray, who, of course, is out for probably the first half to ish. Man, I'll call it half. Let's call it half the season. It's hard to know exactly when he'll be back. Then there's going to be the slow ramp up. This was not a small injury. Dejounte blown Achilles. When did he blew that? It was like halfway through the year. So he'll probably come back, I don't know, December, January, and then there's going to be probably a month where he's getting his legs underneath him. I would not draft Dejounte Murray. You guys know how I feel about dead roster spots. I think it's a recipe for disaster. As I've said a lot of times on this show, I don't draft injured players. This is probably a situation where someone has 3, 4, 5 IL slots in their league. So you're not feeling the impact of a dead slot where, 1, 2, even 3 sometimes IL slots, you're going to use them in a head-to-head league. You're going to need those to just make sure you're not taking zeros. If you only have like 1 or 2 IL slots, you can't. And there are Kyrie and Dame are also on the list today. We could almost lump those 3 guys into one discussion for all 3 of them. So there's Dejounte. Here's Kyrie. He's also on the list. He's another guy who's probably back sometime kind of mid-season. I think Dame was the last one. I don't think Dame even plays this year, so I don't know why he's on this board at all, unless we're talking about a keeper situation for a guy maybe coming back next year. But lump all 3 of those guys together. That was 2, 3, and 10 on the most added board. Dejounte Murray, Kyrie Irving, Damian Lillard. Dejounte and Kyrie, at least you could say, well, if I squat on these guys for 3 months, maybe I get something out of them late in the season. Dame, I don't think is going to be the case. My assessment of all 3 of those guys, as we try to work efficiently on today's show, is Dame, don't bother outside of a keeper situation. Dejounte and Kyrie, if you have more than 3 IL slots in your league, you could take them very late in your draft. Quick stash, throw them into IL, pick up someone to replace them, maybe like a Neemias Queta type player. And that would be the kind of goofball reasoning on that one. Next name on the board, this was the number 4 player as we pivot back into actually sort of alive bodies, is Quentin Grimes. And this one's on the list because Joel Embiid and Paul George are probably not going to be there to start the year. And as we saw down the stretch last season, Quentin Grimes was very, very, very good. Now, it's also worth pointing out the Yahoo game log is just a train wreck all of a sudden that it doesn't fit on the screen. Look at all that just dead space where they're going to definitely put an advertisement. It's also worth pointing out that Tyrese Maxey was out for a good chunk of Grimes' mega heater, which was basically like the last month of the season. He was only listed as top 75 because his percentages were trash. He was at 44.75, but he was going for 25, 5, and 6 with 1.5 steals and 3.5 3-pointers over that stretch. Before that, believe it or not, percentages on Grimes were actually a little bit better. They got worse as his usage went up, which I think is notable. But if you sort of pivot back, and you got to just look at a date range on Grimes, which is basically like after he got traded. So go trade deadline to Tyrese Maxey's exit, which was about a month later. Maybe a little bit less than that. 2.5, 3 weeks later-ish. Those 2 guys played together for like 2 to 3 weeks. And Grimes was around top 100. Although I think Paul George hadn't shut it down yet. So it's a little bit, it's kind of a murky thing going on there. So PG hadn't totally shut it down yet. Maxey hadn't shut it down yet. Grimes was shooting closer to 50% over that stretch instead of 44. And he was a top 50 guy during that window. Point is, if Paul George is out to start the year, if Joel Embiid is out to start the year, if it's Tyrese Maxey and Quentin Grimes as kind of like the main dudes for Philly, you're going to get something out of Quentin. The question is, how much? How far does it go? Because the Sixers remain not exceptionally deep as a ball club. We haven't done them yet. It's one of the very few teams we haven't covered in our team-by-team breakdown. But I'll pull the roster up on the screen here so you can see it. Like, here, watch the scrolling. VJ Edgecombe, who's their rookie, like he might end up doing a bunch of stuff because of the injuries. But in terms of proven usage, I didn't think Quentin Grimes was a usage guy until the end of last year. And luckily we picked him up in a lot of spots because he looked like a great 3-and-D guy right after the trade deadline and then ramped it up a little bit more. Maxey, Oubre, Grimes are kind of it. Jared McCain, I mean, I would argue he's maybe a little bit more of a pass-first guy. Justin Edwards, meh. These guys are behind Grimes and behind Maxey. So I would say Quentin Grimes profiles, at least right now, is let's go back to putting Quentin's face up on your screen. Grimes, to me, profiles as a burger board, like a 2-burger burger board guy to start the year, and then you just ride it until anybody else comes back alive for this team. So sure, those are the types of guys you should probably be looking at as your last pick, because odds are your 13th rounder, someone you're taking at pick 150, is probably not going to be a full season value. Not if you're in even a mildly competitive league. Anybody of note that might last for an entire year, or even half a year, frankly, those guys are generally off the board by pick 120. After 120 in a decent draft, you're getting crap. So instead, upgrade the crap to something that could be good for a month. I don't know. We're still waiting on injury stuff. I'm a little surprised that Yves Missi is on the most added board. I figured he's one of those guys where, like, if he's drafted, he's drafted. If he's not, he's not. He is more than likely the starting center for the Pelicans this year. They have other centers on the roster, but I don't see how any of them jump over Missi, who was the starting center for the bulk of last year. Right? You know, he played high 20s in minutes almost every game. A lot of the season. It wasn't little bits here and there. The problem, of course, is that I don't think Missi is all that great of a fantasy play. He's certainly a lot better in a punt free throw build. That's a game changer. Down the stretch last year, you know, final, call it 10 to 15 games. We can even go a little bit deeper than that. Missi was pretty far down the board. Straight 9-cat, final 2 months, 20-25 games. He averaged 10 and 8 with a block on 55-57 splits, which ranked him outside the top 200. If you remove his poorest category, which of course is free throw percent, that bumped him up to number 135. Again, this is 25 and a half minutes a ball game, so it wasn't a tiny amount of time. Final 10 games of the year, his block rate ticked up a little bit. His rebounding rate ticked up a little bit. His minutes actually didn't change all that much. And he went to 11 and 10 with 1.3 blocks on equally bad free throw percent. And he was inside the top 90 in a punt free throw build. So to me, Missi, he was far away from straight 9-cat value last year. 27 minutes a game he played over the entire season, and he was number 191. By the way, his free throw mark was better earlier in the year, and it kind of came down the stretch. I'm not seeing it, man. Unless there's a big step forward for him in role, I don't see how Missi is going to be like this big turn the corner guy. So this one I don't think I'm on board with. You could take him as a last round pick in a punt free throw team. But odds are by that point, you probably have 4 punt free throw centers on your roster already. He's not going to come with any sort of real trade value because you'd have to trade him to another team with a similar build to your own. He profiles probably more as a schedule streamer. So I haven't put the streaming calendar together yet. That's a thing that takes me a few hours, and I don't have a few hours these days. But I will, because our new nanny starts next week, and then I can actually finally catch up on some stuff. I'm sorry. I know it'll be like a month to the season when I actually finally get caught up. That sucks. It's bad timing on all fronts over here, but thank you guys for bearing with me. Speaking of bearing with me, while we're talking about Yves Missi, it seems like a perfectly reasonable time for me to remind you guys, number one, this show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook. The New Orleans Pelicans are not expected to be very good this year. Their season win total is 29.5 over at FanDuel. Money is pretty well split. I think that's, frankly, a relatively good number. If Zion stays healthy all year, they'll push that. But with no Dejounte Murray, I don't think that they clear 30 wins this season. I don't think they're going to be a very good team. Murray comes back part way. Maybe they get better at that point. And if Zion misses even, 3-4 weeks this year, I don't see how they get to that mark, especially because the Western Conference is a monster. So I lean to the under on the New Orleans Pelicans, although who knows? Maybe they play with a renewed sense of purpose after being old and terrible. They also added Jordan Poole, who I don't think he makes the team better. He might make the team worse. The other thing is, please subscribe. We're a little past the halfway point on today's show. Take a moment to hit that subscribe button, no matter how you're taking in the content. Those of you watching on the screen, you can see all the sweet logos everywhere provided by our buddy Matty G. Thanks for throwing this backdrop together. Follow at Dan Besbris, DanBesbris. That's me on social. At Old Man Squad over on social. Old Man Squad Fantasy is the Instagram handle, although I admit I'm not that great at Instagram because I'm part of an old man squad. I'm not that great with these things. I'm a little bit old. And likes are actually really important. Helps push shows kind of into the algorithm a bit over on the YouTube side. So thank you for that. Let's keep going. Jared McCain, who we talked about briefly during our Quentin Grimes breakdown, is also on the list. He's another player who saw extended run down the stretch last year. But a lot of or not down the stretch, excuse me, the extended run before he got hurt last season in December. He looks like a bona fide chucker. Like everything that we saw on Jared McCain before he went down suggested that he is a shooting guard. He was firing away like shots were about to run out, like there was going to be some sort of weird apocalypse where the only thing that was lost was field goal attempts, which, I mean, that's fine. That's cool and all. But from straight 9-cat, that exposes some small issues. Field goal percent is probably going to end up being an issue, although he didn't shoot that poorly last year. He didn't rebound. He didn't really assist all that much. He didn't get defensive stats. And sure, some of these things could be a little bit different over a larger sample size on McCain. But I don't know that we can bank on it. So again, kind of looking back at what did that mean? Well, here's the issue. Once he got cooking and he was taking all those shots and everybody was having just a dandy of a time, he was playing 31 minutes a game in his final 10 games before he got hurt. 31 minutes a game. He was taking 13 shots during those contests. And he was ranked outside the top 300 because of the holes we talked about. Field goal percent was 44. Free throw was down, which I think was maybe more anomalous than anything else. Turnovers were weirdly high. Steals and blocks were low. Rebounds were low. There are too many negatives to balance out the positives. Now, I think he's going to get a bunch of shots up at the beginning of the year if there is indeed no Paul George and no Joel Embiid to start the season for this team. He'll go out there and he's going to chuck some shots up, and he's going to end up on a bunch of rosters because he's going to score 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, whatever. But if you don't do anything else, that leaves you vulnerable. And you guys know from me, being great at one category doth not a season make. Because look, some of these scoring games are pretty impressive. He had a 30-point game. That was cool. He had a 29-point game. He had a 34. That one actually came with 10 assists. But as we saw the numbers settle, and I'm going to absolutely kill Yahoo Sports for changing this format so we can't show everything on the screen. The turnovers were very high. The steals and blocks didn't exist. The free throws were seemingly less predictable than we thought. He doesn't rebound. He does hit some three-pointers. That's something. So now you're talking about basically points and threes in some abundance with not a whole lot else. So I'm probably not doing the Jared McCain experiment. I'd rather go someone like Quentin Grimes, who has that higher floor because he gets some defensive stats and he gets some rebounds and things of that nature. But again, to repeat myself, McCain is probably going to score at the beginning of the year. I just think you can do better. Sam Hauser is the next name on the list. I've lost track of number here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, was Dame the 11th? Oh, no. He's Hauser is 7th. Sam Hauser is the 7th most added player. I'm actually kind of surprised he's not getting drafted at the very, very tippy-tip end of drafts because he's probably the Celtics starting power forward this year. And perhaps it's because he, and I feel like you could apply this same stuff to Jared McCain, has limited fantasy game. Sam Hauser is good at really one thing, and it's shooting three-pointers. Down the stretch last year when the Celtics were resting everybody, Hauser averaged 26 minutes a game, over 3 threes a night during that stretch. 12 points, 3.2 threes, 3.5 rebounds, no defensive stats to speak of, no assists to speak of. I actually did it on 49 100 were the splits for Hauser down the stretch. He didn't take many free throws, but the 10 that he took, he made all of them. And he's going to have a bigger role this year. We've talked about it 1,000 times, and it's the most obvious thing that's happened across basketball. No Tatum, no Porzingis. They brought in Anthony Simons. They also let go of Drew Holiday, but not as large of an impact thing. There's usage to go around in Boston. But I don't know that there's any amount of usage you could give to Sam Hauser that would actually make him a bona fide top 100 guy. I just don't know. Still, if you're looking at a last pick, and God help us, I'm going to put the game log up again, even though I know we're not going to be able to read it. Crushing. Absolutely crushing. When he gets going, that's a lot of three-pointers. So we might see a Sam Hauser that scores 14, 15 points a game on 4 3-pointers a night with no steals, no blocks, very few rebounds, no assists, and a good free throw percent. Is that good enough for top 100? Probably not. Is it good enough if Celtics have 3 games in 4 nights or 4 games in 5 nights or something like that and you need a power boost in threes? Yeah. Much like probably Jared McCain on this list. And I forget who the other one was that I mentioned. Yves Missi. These to me are guys that are stream-tacular, schedule stream types. I think they profile as somewhere between 100 and 150 in rank. Missi, Hauser, McCain, probably later than that because of his deficiencies. These are guys that you play when their schedules are heavy volumes or, quality days or whatever. Like a day when only 2 teams are playing and you can cross-load your calendar and, still max out Wednesday, Friday or something like that. Hauser, of the names we've talked about that are in this probably schedule stream territory, which I think I said was what? Yves Missi, I just said it. Missi, McCain, and now Hauser. He probably has the most translatable fantasy game because he doesn't have something dragging him down the way that the other 2 guys do, most likely. Although McCain doesn't have your traditional drag. He just, I think, is probably not good at either. Missi is your sort of drag because of free throws and scoring. Hauser could at least be like a borderline positive in some of his weaker categories, and then you just take the fact that he's going to have 1 assist a game and sort of stuff it in your back pocket and poor defensive stats. I don't think he's a top 100 guy. Top 130 feels attainable. Top 150 feels more like your more reasonable target. That's what I'm doing on that one. 2 names left because we already talked about Dame. And name number 1 of those 2 is Dennis Schroder. I always thought it was just Dennis Schroder, but then he did a Lakers. When he was on the Lakers, he did the local radio station's station ID, and he pronounced his own name Schroder. So Schroder, Dennis Schroder, with an accent that I'm poorly doing. I don't think I can do a German accent that isn't deeply racist, so I'm not going to bother with that. And he's the starting point guard for the Sacramento Kings. So I get this one. I really do. But we know Schroder. We've seen him for years. He's not as good at fantasy basketball as he should be. Look at that. Look at that calendar. He's been around, man, over a decade now for Dennis, and he just went on and won the Eurobasket. Was he the MVP? I know he was part of the, like, Tremendous Five or whatever they called the Eurobasket, top player at each position. Germany won. He's been incredible in international competition, and he has not been incredible in the NBA. It's just the weirdest thing. We saw cut it loose and have fun Schroder in Brooklyn at the beginning of last year before he got traded to Golden State. He was terrible for the Warriors. He got traded to Detroit. He was a little bit better there as kind of like a veteran leader with no Jaden Ivey around, and Cade missed a couple of games. But you needed Brooklyn Schroder to get fantasy value. And he was fun. He was great in Brooklyn. He was hitting over 2 3-pointers a game. He scored 18 points with 6.5 assists. He even got a steal because he was playing 33, 34 minutes a night. Is that going to happen in Sacramento? I doubt it. 14 shots and almost 7 assists. Now in Brooklyn, he was the number 1 or number 2 guy. If you want to call him the number 2 behind Cam Thomas, that's fine. But Cam Thomas got hurt a week and a half into the season. So then Schroder became the de facto number 1. On the Kings, he is behind Zach LaVine. He is behind Domantas Sabonis. He is probably behind DeMar DeRozan. He is likely a pass-first, 4th option point guard on this team. That's the likely scenario. There will be days where he forges ahead of DeMar DeRozan in the pecking order. There will be days, however, that he falls behind Keegan Murray or Malik Monk in the pecking order. You are looking at a Dennis Schroder who probably is more like, and honest to God, I don't even remember this iteration of Dennis Schroder, but Toronto, or the one I do remember would be Los Angeles Dennis Schroder, where he was between 9 and 10 shots a game, which got him about 12 points. He was between 4 and 5 assists because he was the starting point guard, but he was not the main point guard. Because for the Kings, your point guard's probably Domantas Sabonis in the starting 5. And then LaVine and DeRozan are going to be your next guys in the usage rung. And if you're looking back at the Lakers that year, that was AD, LeBron were the 2 main guys. Austin Reeves was also fighting with Schroder for touches. That's probably more the Dennis you're going to get. 12 points, 4 to 5 assists, good free throw number, 1.5 3-pointers, poor field goal percent, like 0.8 steals. That's not a 9 category guy. That is again, schedule play or burger board play. He probably does, I should say will. He probably will hold 9 cat value for stretches this year when DeRozan is out. Well, that doesn't happen very often. When LaVine is out. Frankly, if Sabonis misses time and they have to go to a non-center hub offense, there will be more Dennis Schroder. He, as a 4th option, is just not high enough on the totem pole. So I would expect Schroder somewhere ranked near 140, 150. He's a schedule play for all of the season where you're like, oh, cool, 3 games and 4 nights out of Dennis Schroder. That'll get me 30 points and 15 assists. Great. I do want to squeeze that into my head-to-head league. Awesome. I move on from him at the end of those 4 nights. When he goes back to not having an overloaded schedule, I'll pick someone else up unless a couple Kings are out, if bodies get moved, that kind of thing. That's how he pushes up the board. But I don't think we're going to see 14 shot, 7 assist Dennis Schroder. It was a glorious thing, but he needs to be, number 2 really in a team's pecking order to get there. So no, I'm not drafting him, by the way, is the answer to that, or picking him up. Bub Carrington is the last name we're going to talk about. He's number 9 on the list. We already talked about Dame, who was number 10. Bub has also some weaknesses to his fantasy game, but at least with Carrington, there is the element of the unknown. With all these other guys we've talked about, other than, I guess, Yves Missi, there's a little bit of unknown with Jared McCain, but also I think we mostly know. With Bub, this is a guy who played 30 minutes a game last year and is ranked outside the top 230, but that was because of things in his game that we can point to and say, what if? Let's play a little bit of the what if game with old Bubbaroo. And those of you watching on YouTube, you'll see me scroll down here, and I can point to some of them. He shot 40% from the field last year. He was a rookie. That's a number that we can, in our minds at least, we can't necessarily guarantee it, but we can hope that that 40% gets better. He played just 1 year of college ball and shot 41%. So unfortunately, the data we have suggests that maybe that is what it's going to be. But who knows? He's super young. He could get better. He made 1.7 threes per game last year. That's a number that, again, was not super high in college. But as guys get better at the NBA level, that's a thing they tend to work on. And maybe threes gets a little bit better. Maybe assists gets a little bit better because this team doesn't have Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma taking a warm dump on most box scores. They've got Chris Middleton, CJ McCollum, who can take a nice cool dump on a lot of the box scores. But at least as veterans, those guys might not ruin every possession. You might actually see them try to help someone like a Bub Carrington learn a little bit. I am worried about the fact that Bub does not appear to be a particularly strong defensive stats player. He didn't get them in college. He didn't get them in the NBA. It's going to make his pathway to 9 category value kind of difficult. But at the same time, I understand it. He's probably going to be playing full starters minutes for this Wizards team that got, I would argue, more leaning into the... It's weird to say that they're going to lean into the youth more when they picked up older players, but they picked up veteran leaders instead of semi-veteran, I still got to get minors. And so you probably see more being heaped on the actual youth on the Wizards to see what they can do. More for Alex Sarr, more for, well, Koulibaly got himself hurt last week, so just put him off the list for now. Bub, more rookies. They added more rookies to the mix. The list goes on and on. I am not drafting Bub. I do think that the shortcomings in defensive stats, threes, and field goal percent are going to be too much for him to overcome. I don't think that there's any one solo punt you're going to be able to find with Bub that's going to push him far enough up the board to be an actual value. 8-cat either. 8-cat plus a punt, you're still too far away. But he does get closer. 8-cat punt field goal, I could see him getting near the top 100 in that particular build. So if that's your team build, and again, last round pick kind of thing, take a flyer on Bub. Maybe he gives you 12, 13 points and 5 to 6 assists with awful field goal percent. But if you're punting it, who cares? So if you get, I mean, this is a little bit of what we just talked about with Dennis Schroder, 12 and 6 with a bad field goal percent. Sure. But again, like, the prevailing thing I've got to convey to you guys here is Bub Carrington, Dennis Schroder, who the hell did we talk about? Sam Hauser, Jared McCain, Yves Missi. These are guys that are more schedule play than anything else. At least with Schroder and Bub, and to a certain degree Missi, there's a punt that gets them close. The Missi one, I think, is less useful because you're probably, as I mentioned, 3 or 4 punt free throw centers into your build already, and you just don't need that in your last pick. But if you're leaning super hard into the guard build, Dennis Schroder in the last round in a punt field goal team, okay, a dozen points, 5 assists, and trash the rest of the way, not terrible to get at the end. There's sort of no max in your guard build to the number of assists you're looking for. Plus, the other note on the guard build and why Schroder and to a lesser degree Bub Carrington are sort of interesting in that particular punt manifestation of a fantasy basketball team is because you probably take someone like a Trae Young early, and then you got to make sure you get the centers that fit that build, and then you pivot back into these specific, I'm bad at a bunch of stuff, but you didn't need them anyway kind of guys that other teams probably don't want. So like Schroder, like Bub Carrington, you could load up your roster at the end your last 2 to 3 picks could be guys just like these turds that can double punt their way into some kind of value. Because, like, think about Schroder. I don't know. Again, you got to go back to, like, Lakers Schroder. How do we go Lakers Schroder at the very, what was that, 2022? His turnovers weren't that bad that year. What was Dennis in a punt field goal build? He was still only 175. I mean, my gut probably is the accurate one here, which my gut is telling me you probably don't need to worry about most of those dudes. But hey, again, you got your real super weird build. Still, I would rather in these punt builds, unless you really screwed something up, I would rather take flyers on guys you think might be super interesting in any build at the end, and then maybe trade them for someone that was drafted earlier that fits your team better. Take a shot on Quentin Grimes at the end, and if in early November the Sixers are like, oh, by the way, Joel Embiid, Paul George, not back till January, you probably could trade Quentin Grimes for someone who maybe fits your weird build better. And this happened to me in my mock draft I did yesterday. We get so caught up in team build, we forget to go get players that we really like for fantasy. There's always a way. I would say it's probably more beneficial at the end of your draft to go take a shot in the 11th, 12th round on a guy you think might have like 7th round value, and then trade him for someone who was drafted in the 7th round who maybe fits your team better. Your team doesn't have to be a perfect build on day one. Just amass good players, and you might have a totally different team build than you thought after your first 2 picks anyway. All right, well, that went better than expected. I didn't know how a top 10 would go in mid-September, but there were some kind of interesting names on the board there. Like, rate, subscribe. You made it to the end. Now I really need you guys to do these things. Hit that subscribe button. Let's grow this bad boy. I'm Dan Besbris. That's my name. It's also my handle on social, DanBesbris. Like as well. One show for me today. That's it. I got to pick up my kid early. It's a short day at school, and I'm still nannyless. Have a lovely Tuesday, everyone, or whenever the hell you watch this show. Stop saying the day. Bye, guys.